We're going to go ahead and finish up chapter 1 here. We're going to look at section 6. We're going to use a combination of graphing by hand and graphing by decimals. So this first one, we're going to go ahead and use decimals on it because it's a piecewise, because we have two totally separate pieces. Now remember, to type something like this into decimals, you have to go y equals curly bracket. What's after the if has to go first, colon. What's before the if goes after the colon. And then close your curly bracket. And your curly brackets are on your keyboard. Also, you can hit that little keyboard button in the lower left-hand corner of decimals to find the greater than or equal to. When you type in the second one, you go y equals the curly bracket. What's after the if goes first, colon. What's before the if goes second. When you type that in, you should end up getting a graph that looks like this. Now, keep in mind, because when we look at this red one up here, there's a greater than or equal to that we're going to end up having a solid dot at +1. Now, when we're looking at the green one here, which I'm going to go ahead and change to blue so it matches the graph. So now that I've changed it, now that we go ahead and look at the blue one here, that inequality is only a less than, no less than or equal to, so that's an open circle there. So our graph would look like this. Now once again, if you did need to find your domain, it would be, once again, all this highlighted stuff. You're not asked to find your domain, but the two highlighted things after the if include everything greater than or equal to 1 and all numbers less than 1, so that's all real numbers. If you're looking at your range, that would be how far up and down your graph would go. And you can see that it starts here at a height of -2 and then goes up forever, so it would be y greater than or not equal to, because it's an open circle, just greater than -2. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next one. But just as a review for when we're graphing inequalities, you need to remember that if you're dealing with just a less than or just a greater than, that they're dashed lines similar to this here. If you're dealing with the next line down, a less than or equal to or a greater than or equal to, they're going to be solid lines, so they will look like this here. Now, when y is on one side by itself, and you had y greater than whatever it is, or greater than or equal to, you need to shade above the line, or you would need to shade above the line. If it's a horizontal line, you'd still have to shade above the line. If it's a vertical line, you'd be shading to the right of the line. Now, if you were dealing with a y with a less than or a y with a less than or equal to, you need to shade from the line down. Shade from the line down. Shade from the line down. Or if it was a vertical line, you'd be shading to the left of that line. So just be aware of that when you are dealing with your inequalities. So now let's go ahead and look at this one here. We have y on one side by itself, and it's in the form of y equals mx plus b. So I can start out at my y-intercept, which is what's added or subtracted to x, which is -5. And then your slope is what's in front of your x. Remember, slope is rise over run, so you could go down 5 over 2, or you could go up 5, left 2. Either one would work. Now, I'm not going to do the down 5 over 2 because I'd be off my graph. I'm going to use the up 5 over 2, up 5 over 2, up 5 over 2. Now, you'll notice that our inequality here In our original problem, it's a greater than or equal to, so that means we need to draw in a solid line here. So let's go ahead and draw in a solid line. And because it's an inequality, we need to shade. Now, once again, this is a greater than, so you got to shade above the line. You got to shade all the y's above that are larger than or greater than your line. So that's shading everything above your line. And so it would look like this. When we're looking at the top right one over here, I want to go ahead and get y by itself. So I'm going to subtract the 2x from both sides. And I get negative y less than negative 2x plus 2. Then I'm going to go ahead and divide everything by negative. Now remember, when you divide by a negative, you need to switch your inequality sign. Then once again, when y is on one side by itself and it's a line, what's being added or subtracted to your x is your y-intercept. That's where you start. And then what's in front of x, which if we write it as a fraction, would be your slope. We have to go up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. Or it could be a negative 2 over a negative 1, because a negative over a negative is positive. So we can go back to that green dot. We can go down 2, left 1, down 2, left 1. Now, notice that your inequality sign here is only a greater than, not a greater than or equal to. So when you graph this, it needs to be a dotted line or a dashed line. And we need to now shade because it's an inequality. Now, once again, when we're looking here, it's a greater than, so you got to shade above your line. So you go to your line and shade above, go to your line, shade above, go to your line, shade above, go to your line and shade above. So it's everything over here on this side for your line. Now, here you can graph these by hand if you want, by making a table, an XY chart, or you could use Desmos. If you use Desmos, you can type it in just as you see it, y greater than or equal to, but you have to use that little keyboard button, lower left-hand corner of Desmos. And then you can either use the absolute value button from that keyboard button, or you can use the vertical bars above your enter key on your keyboard. When you type that in, you will get this. Now, Desmos does do an edge that is solid like it's supposed to, and it does go ahead and shade above because you want y greater than, so that means you got to shade above your line. When you graph the next one, number 33, into Desmos, you can go there and type it in just as you see it. Once again, if needed, hit the little home button if your window's messed up. But when you type that in, it gives you this here. Now, Desmos does do a dotted or dashed line because it's not a less than or equal to, only a less than. And it does shade below our V shape. So you would end up getting something that looks like this.